We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. You're listening to Planet Green Trees, episode 197. We're calling it The Use of Cannabis in Treating Autism. Today's May 1st, 2014. It's Thursday, and calling number is 1-347-326-9626. I'm your host, Michael Komorn of Komorn Law, and with me to bring you the most up-to-date, informative content on the national and international and local level of medical cannabis and cannabis reform is the one and only Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club.
And thank goodness for that.
There's only one of you, yes. The concurrence all around. Another individual that's a one and only, but his own a one and only, not like Chad. The one and only Rick Thompson, the Compassion Chronicles editor-in-chief.
I'm sort of like Chad, I gotta say. That's a good thing to be like.
It's just adversarial. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
Correct, because I'm not adversarial at all. Good.
I'm gonna qualify Rick's behavior tonight. He was in a debate all day. So everything is like, what? No. And we're going to talk about it. I'm excited to hear more about it. And I was wrapped up working at the desk, and I only saw bits and pieces. But I hear the sheriff debate of taking on Rick Thompson. Hers went the distance. Also, joining us soon is a promised to be our time. Was late, unfortunately. We understand he is going to be showing up.
No, he's not.
The producer who is the one really responsible for getting all of the great guests, booking them week after week, providing just the best content up to date and really the most interesting of characters that we be able to produce week after week. Jamie Lowe of the Third Coast Compassion Center. And don't forget, if there's something you don't like about the show, call Jamie. Don't call me. He's taking all accountability and responsibility. Tonight, this show will be bringing you packed 2 hours plus, all kinds of content. We'll be focusing on number one, what can only be described as the stupidity of the 5 nanogram THC limit. This is got to be understood in a context. We have had discussions on the show in the past about driving. We've had discussions in the past about cannabis and its effects on driving. I've ranted many, many times about different issues. I've had discussed trials that we've had. And during the course of a recent discussion of some testimony that was given by one of our own within the community regarding the saliva testing, one of the advocates was suggesting that Michigan adopt the 5 nanogram THC limit. And we had that person on the show. We took comments from him. And to rebut that, we're going to have Dr. Karl Ebner, Ph.D., Toxicologist and Pharmacologist. He's been published. His training is in Quality Control, Quality Assurances, Forensic Toxicology, Pharmacology. He consults, and he's a recognized expert in Michigan, throughout the Midwest, New Jersey, Arizona, state, federal courts, circuit court, and district courts. He's a scientist, a unit chief, laboratory manager, supervisor, internal auditor, analytical bench chemist. I've used him many, many, many times and refer to him often in some of the authority by which I rely in my conclusions of this. He's going to be calling in at 8:30 to discuss what his thoughts are in terms of the 5 nanogram THC limit. Also, at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, we are going to be discussing with something I think everyone who's involved is very, very excited about, and it is the following: that with the help of many, and only with the help of many, myself, Chad, a number of other activists are, on behalf of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, on behalf of Komorn Law, we have the support on Compassion Chronicles, Third Coast Compassion, and it will be a long, long, long list. But it is time for Michigan to make it safe for those parents and guardians who are interacting with persons afflicted with autism as a disease. They should be protected should a physician determine that the autistic patient receive therapeutic or palliative relief in treating the symptoms. We're excited about this because as I began to look into this, and we're gonna have a discussion as much as we can about this. In the callers are going to be Joe Stone, who is active participant in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association. Really, I mean, I've never seen someone work so diligently and produce such outstanding content in terms of the research associated with possible success in cannabis as a treatment to autism. Also, Dr. Christian Bogner has been another caller to the show who is going to offer his thoughts and reading the research. But one of the exciting aspects of this announcement and our plan to recruit other parents, activists to sign on and to the petition is the one and only Dr. Harry Chugani. He happens to be one of the premier physicians in the state of Michigan who is the chief of pediatric neurology at the Children's Hospital of Michigan. He's heavily engaged in research and treats many children with autism who exhibit difficult behaviors. After more than 20 years of treating hundreds of patients afflicted with autism, he supports the approval of cannabis to treat difficult externalizing behaviors seen in autism, and most importantly, the protections for the patients, parents, their guardians, and the caregivers assisting those patients. And along with this recruitment that we are going through, and as we're going to discuss tonight, is some research to support this position. We're going to discuss how the original petition had failed and some of the challenges we're going to have moving forward. We may have a call in from Dave Brogren from the New Conditions panel just for a procedural matter. But one of the things to think about is this, that the CDC last report in 2010 showed that 1 in 42 males and 1 in 189 female children born are diagnosed with autism. This is insane to me. Those statistics suggest that there needs to be some critical analysis of why this is going on. And from my limited interactions with the people that are involved in this community, there are very few, if any, actual solutions. And it can be a terrible, terrible shutout life from a parent for a child or a relative or what have you. And it appears as if there's a definite benefits that can be had. So that is what the show is about. I do want to do a couple quick shout-outs first to my good friends Dewey and Pam. Got a big day coming up tomorrow. I had a whole thing that I prepared, but I'm going off the cuff now. But we got to rock it early, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Also, thank you to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, the moderators and administrators, keeping a safe, comfortable environment for the community to utilize the forums to educate themselves of medical cannabis and evolve the conversation. The Marijuana Ranch, 313-422-5281. Call for your cultural tour. Dr. Kumar Singh, Green Light Clinic, 248-390-0574. We talk about gold standard certification. Dr. Kumar has, in fact, employed it at his location, and you should receive not just a certification, but an ongoing bona fide relationship. And I cannot mention enough how important this is for you and your patient status. Bob and Tori really would have become, unfortunately, the poster child of sick people, where the law really did not work for them. They were tortured and dragged through court. And it's over. But, of course, Tori, who, her condition in the past had been described as only having ovarian cancer, is in hospice. And I know Bob has been taking care of her. And I just, my heart goes out to them for the struggle they had to go through. And I know the community's prayers and good wishes are with you.
Amen. Good luck, Tori.
Eric Gunnels, we always want to shout out to our good friend, the trustee for Thetford Township, progressive politician who is one from our own community, has taken the step of being an elected official in a community. And we encourage all those that listen and participate in the show to participate in local government, because it's the only way that we're going to bring any sanity to the insanity that's currently taking place with our current legislators. All right, so I'm going to rant for a second here. There's always so many things to talk about and so many topics to choose from, but I was motivated this past week by the story of these 5 cops being busted for lying on the stand. I don't know if you heard about it. I believe it was Chicago, I believe. I mean, it doesn't really matter the location. It could be anywhere. Pick any place, but we'll call it Chicago. This story was out of Chicago. And the story goes that 5 police officers systematically got on the witness stand and testified that the facts as they went down happened in a way that supported their theory of a valid search. And I can tell you that this has happened. Any lawyer that has ever practiced criminal defense for any period of time, they'll know. For example, a client comes in and sits down across the table from me and says, this is what happened. I was driving, and they pulled me over, and they found they pulled me over, held me there for a period of time, then took my keys, popped my trunk, looked in there, and they found some marijuana in the trunk. And I'll read the police report, and it'll say something to the effect of, police officer pulled over, smelled marijuana, asked the defendant to step out, and as he stepped out, he could see on the floor of the board a bag of marijuana in plain view, quote, because those are the buzzwords that get you into the car. And, how do you disprove that? I know in my mind, my client does not know, generally speaking, the nuances of those 2 fact patterns and why one may be more beneficial than the other. He or she or it just sat there and explained to me because they're telling me the facts as they happen. My synapses in my brain are firing, spotting the constitutional issues. So when they tell me these things, I don't suggest, or it doesn't even cross my mind that on these types of answers of whether or not they're telling the truth or not, and I'm more interested in how they recollect those facts. Time and time again, you will see a police report written that it's as if the observations were at a different crime scene. There's a completely different set of facts, different terms of art that are used to describe things, but all buzzwords nonetheless to justify the activity of the police officer. I say all the time, remember, these are the ways you observe things. The police officers write the reports after the event has taken place, and they, of course, are reflecting back on and looking for facts that they can articulate that justify their behavior, which has probably just been either arresting you or taking your property in some way. What was interesting about this case in Chicago was that after the 5 officers systematically got on the stand and told their version of the events, an unknown video was played that proved, after they had testified under oath, that they had been lying. Now, let's talk about this concept. Again, I'm not totally familiar with all the facts of the case, but I know and can tell you that it happens in every court throughout every state in this country every day. But what it is there's some challenge to a constitutional protection made by the defendant. There's a criminal case. It could be from a traffic stop. It could be from a execution of a search warrant in somebody's home. But in some way, the protections outlined in the Fourth Amendment, the right to be free from illegal searches and seizures, has been put into question. In other words, the individual is in court, and at issue is whether or not their constitutional rights have been violated or not, whether or not the police behavior was appropriate in their procedures. Now, people oftentimes misunderstand how this works out. The issue of whether or not an individual's constitutional rights have been violated or not is not something that's determined by the jury. It's determined by the judge. The issues of constitutional violations, for all intents and purposes, are legal issues. They're not factual issues. In other words, I mean, I would like to many, many times, and I'm not saying that I never will, but it's not. I don't know that it's not always lawful for a lawyer to argue, ladies and gentlemen, or you're not going to find a lawyer allowed to, I should say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is not guilty clearly because the police officers violated his constitutional rights with that illegal search and seizure. That magistrate should have never signed that affidavit. Therefore, you should find him not guilty. That's not something that is allowable. It's not relevant. It's an issue that has already been resolved, and if it has been resolved, and it was resolved in the favor of the defendant where the constitutional rights had been violated, the next step would be that the evidence would or should be excluded, most likely, and therefore the case would get dismissed. But the point that I'm making is that the challenges to whether or not the police acted appropriately as it relates to the Fourth Amendment are done in front of judges. And despite the fact that you see very, very few cases that actually result in dismissals where the judge makes a finding that the constitutional rights of the defendant have been violated, or that the officers who testified under oath were lying, despite the number of times that these types of pleadings are alleged in every courtroom across the country every day. Very few ever get dismissed or found in favor of the defendants. This case in Chicago is a classic example, because while in this case there was a secret video that came out that proved otherwise, and all the evidence that was gathered in this illegal search, which up to the point of the video being played seemed to be a legal search, it was thrown out and the charges were dropped against the defendant. Now, think about this for a second. But for the videotape, this would have been just another day in the court of law, the court of justice. Just another day where some doper caught with some drugs in his car is on that stand blabbing about how these 5 cops are lying. They're lying. You can't believe all 5 of them. They all, they're lying. It didn't happen. It's very difficult for a court, a judge, in any jurisdiction ever to look at that testimony. After all, they are evaluating the testimony. You got 5 officers going to stand and tell a story. I don't care how good the cross-examination is, unless they get caught lying on some other issue. But what you can see here is that there's a systematic effort of producing consistent corroborated testimony. So in this case, for example, that the video saved the day. Think about other times where there was good cross-examination and other types of things that took place where the court may have been maybe questioning it, but still you've got this corroborated testimony. This isn't the first time that this has taken place for these 5 officers. It's certainly not the first time it's taken place for any officers who engage in this kind of conduct. And it happens all the time. And the point that I'm making is that the integrity of these issues, the integrity of the war on drugs, the integrity of the fighting of crime, and the challenges to the Fourth Amendment are driven by the integrity of the police officers. What do I mean by that? Well, for starters, if the police officers want to initiate or are involved in an investigation, they want to get into your home because they think that there's some illegal activity there, they are the ones that will produce an affidavit. They will swear under oath and produce an affidavit and take it to a neutral and detached magistrate for them to review. And because of the officers' training and experience and what they said they saw and the things that they believe and the hunches that and the way that they draw the conclusion, the way that they piece it together, the things that they may put in, the things that they may not put in, the things that they think that are important that are going to lead to this conclusion, it's based on their integrity. And the magistrate that receives it usually rubber stamps it. They're supposed to look at it. We don't know of the times when they're rejected or they say this isn't enough information, go and get it, but they're relying upon that. Most magistrates are not elected officials, and they're really rubber stamp hired to slam out search warrants. Nonetheless, it is that activity, it's that honesty and that integrity and the representations by a police officer that get the search warrant. The problem is that if, for some reason, a finding is made in court when this affidavit is challenged or the issuance of the search warrant is challenged, the court rules in favor of the defendant, there is no list that exists that those officers who failed the Constitution and failed the defendants and failed their duty to uphold the law and to protect the Constitution, there's no list for that to be put on. In fact, it wouldn't be uncommon for there to be a finding in court one day where these officers, these 5 officers, or in another court, not these 5, 10, they were moved to desk duty, where, as if that's punishment, but where officers may have a affidavit found to be invalid, a search warrant to be invalid, all the evidence suppressed, and those detectives, those officers are in front of a magistrate later that day with a similar kind of boilerplate affidavit, a search warrant to go into someone else's home. But they know they're going to get away with it the next time. That was just one case where someone got tripped up. Officer Jimmy forgot to say the left pocket instead of the right pocket. And who knows what the reasons are. But the point is that it goes on, and the integrity of the system is driven by this. When they get on the stand, if there isn't a smoking gun, if there isn't a videotape Put yourself in the position of a judge. You get 5 officers that get on the stand and tell the same story over and over and over again. Oh, no, no, no. I'm telling you, when I got up to that window, I could see the butt of the gun sticking out from underneath that seat. That's in plain view, counsel. I know the law. I know that that's plain view. Anyways, the sad story about this cops being busted for lying on the stand is that it's just another day on the front lines of any given court at any given day, and it's going to continue to go on, and it does not change, that there is no accountability. If a lawyer got caught doing this, they would take his ticket away. If a doctor was caught with doing these kind of unethical behaviors, he wouldn't be practicing medicine anymore. There's all kinds of professions that license themselves and monitor themselves in a way that brings integrity to the system. The problem is that the war on drugs is driven by the integrity of these officers, and there's no one monitoring their integrity or their honesty. And that is why when you find 5 cops busted for lying on the stand and you just happen to have a smoking gun of a videotape that there's the only way to contradict them, you get a slight glimmer into the reality that takes place in some of these courts and how the absolute outrage that takes place amongst some of the behavior and why the atrocities of these constitutional violations go unaccountable. Not accountable, no one's accountable. And when they are proven, there's no one is accountable and nothing happens and there's no change. And that's my rant. We'll take a break. Listen to Planet Green Trees. We've got an exciting show. We're going to be talking about the stupidity of 5 nanograms of THC level per se in the blood when driving, and autism, adding it as a condition, treating it effectively with cannabis. We'll be right back. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626.